Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday night live. And tonight we are live. And you know how that works. If you comment with us tonight, if you're watching this while we're broadcasting and you put in your comments in whatever platform, we're going to try our best to answer your questions. Tonight we are talking about for sale by owners. And in our business, the professional side of things, we refer to that as FSBOs. So for sale by owner, guys, the market is hot right now all over the country. It's all you hear about in the news. You know, houses selling like crazy, multiple offers. And, historically speaking, I have to say, though, it's really not the best thing to try and sell the house yourself. Historically speaking, we're going to dive into this tonight in detail. But for somebody that's been in the industry for decades, usually a for sale by owner ends up hiring the professional. I know the market's different now. We're going to discuss all that more tonight. Low inventory, over asking price offers, removing contingencies. That's where we are, guys. We're going to dive right in tonight. My guest is an expert on this topic. Brandon Mulrenin. He's coming from Michigan. He's a fellow real estate broker. Guys, I'm Todd Sachs. I'm the broker here at Sachs Realty. We're a residential commercial brokerage here in Maryland. I help people all over the country, though, with our broker network of great brokers like Brandon. Brandon, thanks for being on tonight's show. Just introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah, Todd, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited. I think to your point, it's a great topic that we're going to get into tonight. I think a lot of people hopefully will get a lot of value from the information that we're going to give. My name is Brandon Mulrenin. I'm a real estate broker, owner of a firm called Brookstone Realtors in Metro Detroit, Michigan. I've got about 200 agents on the team and growing. And, really it's my goal to help our agents serve the consumer, Todd, at the highest level so that the not only just the perception of real estate agents changes, but that the consumer realtor relationship is something that continues to grow deeper. And it's up to guys like you and I to help the industry, help agents provide more values to the consumer doing things like we're doing tonight. So thanks for having me on.
So, Brandon, we're going to try and stay out of the hot seat. We're going to try and stay out of trouble tonight, right? We're going to try and, deliver the goods, deliver the facts. I mean, obviously, you and I, we have a great interest in people utilizing professionals, right? So we're going to be talking about this topic of sell your house yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, we're like, are we crazy? I mean, what are we talking about here? This is what we do. We know we offer value, despite what a lot of people, they say, agents, they don't do anything. They just make a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about some of the things that some agents may do or not do. And then what you should be doing if you're looking to actually take on this task without having a license or without knowing, the ins and outs in the industry like we do. Let's just talk briefly, Brandon, about the current market, the current situation, because I don't know about Michigan, but I know here in Maryland, we're seeing insanity. We're seeing prices like we've never seen before, asking prices where they're priced high, where we think, wow, we're at the top of the market. And then we see it's going over that with multiple offers. We have one situation where one of my agents has a buyer that has put an offer in. And the agent said, well, we have 50 more showings in the next 2 days, 50 more showings. And we're going to wait until Wednesday to present offers. And what are you seeing?
Yeah, same thing. I think, obviously inventory levels are the lowest they've ever been in history. And in addition to that, it's like the perfect storm because mortgage interest rates also are hitting historic lows as well. So you've got the perfect storm of banks and lenders giving money next to nothing. There's no homes for sale. And so you got all these people that have all this money to buy a house, nothing to buy. So anytime a good property hits the market, it's like that shark infested water. One house hits the market. Most markets, regardless of where you're at in the country, there's probably 10, 12, 15, 20 buyers for every one home on the market. So every time something hits the market, people are just lined up outside, willing to offer whatever price to get that property.
Are you seeing the removal of contingencies like home inspections and appraisal contingencies, or people offering? I mean, we're seeing where somebody will say, hey, we're going to do it as is, with an inspection or without an inspection, and we'll pay up to $15,000 or $20,000 over any appraised value. Are you seeing that same thing?
Absolutely. I mean, to your point earlier, we're seeing things that are just, one would argue that, potentially is insane. Like, I cannot believe what buyers are willing to do for homes. But the unfortunate part for buyers is they don't have any options. So, and the big thing with the real estate transaction on the buyer side is it's a very emotional process. So if something hits the market and it's updated and it's nice and they qualify for the money, because that's the thing. So Todd, because interest rates are so low that their affordability is so high, so they're saying to themselves, well, I'd rather buy a house that's updated. I don't care, Todd, if I have to overpay, because I'd rather do that than go into a house and have to drop 50 or 100,000 out of my pocket to do renovations. So yeah, we're seeing all kinds of stuff. I mean, letting sellers live in their houses for free and, giving them foot rubs every night while they're moving out. I mean, anything, you name it, and they're willing to do it.
So Brandon, you teach a lot about for sale by owners. I mean, and by the way, guys, I mean, we will make sure that, all of our information is in the show notes. Brandon has a great YouTube channel. If you're a real estate agent, you're watching right now tonight, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments. Certainly, this is really about, if you're going to try and sell your house yourself, a lot of the different things that you could do, some things you should or shouldn't do. If you're going to interview an agent, things that you should ask and make sure that you're getting if you decide to go that route. But if you're an agent, we really want to hear from you too, because we know you're out there working hard. And Brandon has an amazing YouTube channel. In fact, I watch a lot of his videos and actually implement some of his, teachings at our brokerage here locally. And so I would encourage you guys to check him out. But you focus a lot on for sale by owners. And, Brandon, what kind of person, if we just start, and we're not going to say a bad person, but what kind of person is thinking about taking on selling their own house? What are they thinking? What kind of person does this?
So I think here's where this conversation starts, and here's what I teach every single one of my agents is it is not a bad thing that somebody wants to sell on their own. That's the big disconnect, Todd, between our industry and the consumers, is this battle of a consumer that can make their own decisions. These are adults, and they want to try to sell their house on their own. Our industry, in my opinion, has done a bad job serving that community of people because we try to pressure them or try to make them feel inadequate or make them feel dumb for trying to sell on their own. What I teach and what I believe, Todd, is quite the opposite. I believe that if someone wants to try to sell their home as somebody in the industry, to not have a scarcity mindset, to have an abundance mindset, to go out there. Now, listen closely. This is a lot of people are going to say, what did he just say? I believe that we should go out there as real estate professionals and serve the for sale by owner in a way where we actually help them sell on their own without pressuring them to list the house with us. We're the expert. And a lot of people are like, I just don't understand that concept, which we're going to talk a lot about tonight. But that's where the conversation starts, is our industry has got to stop using high pressure selling tactics with the consumer and start serving the consumer without wanting anything in return. So I'm under the belief that we're going to go out there, that people want to sell their house on their own, and we're going to serve that community. We're going to help that community. We're going to provide value to that community. We're going to give them tips, strategies, advice on how they can successfully sell their home on their own, especially right now when there's no inventory, that we may have a buyer client that's looking to purchase that property. So that's number one. Number two, the person, why they sell on their own, to answer your question, is the number one reason, and there's all the stats to back it up, but this is obvious, is they believe that selling their house on their own and not paying a real estate commission, that they end up with more money, net bottom line in their pocket, than they would if they hired an agent. That's the number one reason why somebody does that. They also want to control the process, and they believe they can do a better job than a real estate agent could do. And so those would be the two things that, that people, I think, need to think through.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times also, when I'm talking with for sale by owners or people that are considering doing so, a lot of them too they've had bad experiences.
That's right.
So they, had an agent that, they felt they did all the work anyway, right? Yeah. So, if you're thinking, hey, I did the work myself, well, why do I need the help? So that may be a reason too. And you know what? And they could have a very valid point. I mean, in any industry, there's, you've got the professionals and the ones that you shouldn't hire, right?
Let me add something to that. And sure. So that's a great point. We have 1.6 million licensed real estate agents in North America right now. In 2020, over 50% of them did not sell one house. And so this means that you have an industry that is made up of a lot of people where this is a second career, a hobby, a part-time thing. Little cousin Johnny gets his license and then he sells aunt and uncle's house and he screws the whole thing up. So to your point, I would agree. A lot of people that sell by owner say, oh my gosh, I tried a realtor, and they believe all realtors are the same. They've never worked with a real professional. And so how can you blame them? They hired little cousin Johnny. They hired their mom, who this is her first house she's ever sold. There's a lot to be said to what you just said.
And, and another thing, a lot of people think it's easy.
Yeah.
So, I find that, I hear a lot of people say, well, it's not that hard, especially in today's market where all you do is put it on the internet. And, what I want everybody to do, and I really, because it is a hot market, but I want what I want you guys to do, and I didn't want to get into, pulling all this data off of Zillow. I know everybody knows Zillow, right? It's no secret to talk about Zillow. Whether you like them, don't like them, you're in the industry, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, if you go to Zillow right now and you put in for sale by owner in Zillow, or you just Google search for sale by owner, you're going to pull up, you'll be able to put a geographical area of all the houses that are for sale by owner in Zillow. And one of the things, and I checked this today, one of the things that I want you to look at with that, and this is kind of, jumping ahead a little bit, but I don't want to forget to mention this. I want you to see the amount of price reductions and the amount of days on the market that you're going to find of these for sale by owners. In this market, guys, on the professional side of things, and I could pull market stats and prove this to you, but one thing we're not seeing is a whole lot of days on the market and a whole lot of price reductions. Now, yep. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but I'm saying we're not seeing that. I want you to do that. I want you to go to Zillow. If you're considering selling your home, I want you to put in for sale by owner, put in the boundaries of where you're selling. And I want you to see for yourself things, and it says it right at the top, price reduced 10,000, price reduced 5,000, 77 days on the market, 60 days on the market. So I don't want you guys, if you're going to try this yourself, and we're going to get into some of the things that you need to do to prepare, but I don't want you to think that this is easy, okay? Because it's not. We in the industry, work very hard, very diligently to do the job that we do to make sure you guys come out on top through all the negotiations. So, Brandon, let's just kind of talk about the things that people should be doing, kind of like from a top down, like, how does someone prepare to sell the house themselves?
Yeah. there's so many things to think through. I think that, there's some really, really important things I want to make sure that the audience takes away. And that is that most for sale by owners that are successful selling on their own have a buyer agent that is attached to the transaction. And so we have to look at why that is. So let's think about the mindset of someone who's selling by owner. They would prefer, Todd, as you know, to have no real estate agents involved at all, right? They don't want a buyer's agent. They certainly don't want a listing agent representing them. They want to go and find a buyer who's unrepresented. Well, let's first talk about what the issues are with that. Number one, when somebody sells their home and they are not open to working with a buyer's agent, who are the buyers that they are marketing their home to? Let's think about this. They are marketing to a buyer who also has to say no to representation. Well, in North America, the buyer's agent is free for the buyer. That representation, the legal representation between buyer and buyer broker, there is no cost to that. So think about the person who says, no, Todd, I don't want free representation. I'm specifically going to work with, I'm going to go shop for sale by owners. Well, the for sale by owner seller says, well, great, that's what I want, Brandon. What's the problem? Well, here's the problem. Why would a buyer say no to free representation, to great access to properties before they hit Zillow, all the services you get when you work with an agent as a buyer? Why would somebody say no to that? There's only one reason. It's because they want a deal as well as the for sale by owner. And the for sale by owner doesn't think about that. They say, wait a minute, that's a good point. Because there's no other reason why a buyer that's fully qualified, that's working, that's smart, that's intelligent, that's educated, says, nope, I don't want any representation. I want to shop only for sale by owners. The reason the buyer does that is they want to go and shop FSBOs or for sale by owners, beat them up on price, and look for a deal. The same way, Todd, as somebody who's buying a car goes and shops cars on Craigslist versus cars that are sold by dealerships. Why? Because you can't go into a dealership and just beat them up on price. Not going to happen. You can go beat somebody up that's selling their house on Craigslist all day long because there's no professional standards there. So the for sale by owner, the first thing that they have to think about is, that's interesting. I want to save on the commission. But if all I'm marketing to are people who also don't have agents, what incentive do they have to give me a premium for my house? Oh, yeah, that's right. They don't. They're shopping you on purpose to beat you up on price. This is why you talk about stats. This is why the for sellers that do sell significantly less than they would had the home been on the market with a full service brokerage. So on the onset of saving money by not paying a commission, most for sale by owners come out netting less money even by not paying a commission. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. No, you went there, man. I mean, that is a conversation. I mean, a lot of times, so I mean, let's face it. I mean, to Brandon's point, most people that are looking to buy a house, they have an agent. Brandon, would you agree with that?
It's free. It's free. Yeah. That's why.
Most people, they do have an agent, and they want that agent because they want somebody that is kind of looking out for their interest, right?
That's right.
And then you have the other side, and guys, look, we're not talking about, we're not talking about commissions. All the brokers, they have their different structures and things like that. I mean, we can use a general term, but we're going to stay away from that. But think about this. Do most people want to work for free? And the answer to that is no, right? No. I mean, an agent. So what happens on a for sale by owner, and we're going to talk about, should you offer to work with agents? The answer is yes. We're going to tell you how you can do that. But if you're thinking you want to do this, to Brandon's point, like without an agent completely, man, you're chopping off just a ginormous amount of potential or eyeballs or walk through traffic to your to your for sale by owner, because these people are represented, these buyers are represented, and the agents aren't going to work for free. So, and a lot of times they're knocking on the door saying, hey, look, I have a buyer I'd like to show them, but will you cooperate and pay me a commission? And they go, no, and slam the door in the face. Guess what? Agent gets back in the car and the buyer drives away with the agent, right?
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly right. So again, I'm hoping that we speak to the homeowner that's watching this, who's thinking about or is selling their house on their own. Remember, if you say no to agents altogether, I don't care if they're representing me or a buyer, you are only appealing to a buyer who, again, says no to representation themselves. Why do they do that? Because they want a deal, or what we didn't talk about is they are not qualified. Because think about this. When an agent, a licensed real estate agent, works with a buyer, one of the first things that we do is go through a mortgage qualification process, so that before we show a house, you, the seller, can rest assured that there's a fully qualified, fully capable buyer walking through your home. When you're selling by owner and you're appealing to buyers that have no representation, not only do they want to beat you up on price, lowball you, give you bad terms, you don't know if they qualify or not. You don't know who you're opening your door up, not to mention opening up for potential threats and criminal activity. It's very, very dangerous to sell your house on your own as well.
Safety. Yeah, that's a big, absolutely. All right. So let's talk about some of the process. So they need to get their house ready, right? So you're thinking about selling your house. You're going to try and do it yourself. One of the first things you should probably be doing is getting somebody in there to show you what you should do to depersonalize and declutter the house, right? So what do you recommend for that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it on your if you're going to do it on your own, you're not going to have an agent who's trained to help you through this. Yeah, you want to depersonalize the home, because we want the buyers to picture themselves in the property without thinking about your family, because again, buyers is a very emotional process. So we want to declutter, we want to depersonalize, we want to clean the house as much as possible. And then here's another thing that I recommend is getting a pre-listing inspection to make sure to say, okay, well, if I'm going to hit the market, I'm going to go sell my house, let me proactively make sure everything's on the up and up. Let me have someone look in the attic, because I cannot tell you how many times we find mold in attics, and the seller said, oh my God, I had no idea. Well, of course you didn't. When's the last time you looked in your attic? So I'd have a pre-listing inspection. I would have the home professionally cleaned. I would not smoke in the house, get the dog hair out. I mean, you don't want any funky smells, because that thing turns buyers off immediately. You could have the most beautiful home. They start smelling funky things. They're out. They're gone. And so you want to capitalize. You want to do everything you can do, Todd, to capitalize on the first impression. That's everything when selling a home.
So how do they come up with the price?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the big, I think, point of contention for, I think, our industry and the for sale by owner. Look, I mean, here's the reality, and people in our industry do it too. The reality is it has an emotional attachment to our home, and we all think our house is worth more than what it actually is. I mean, that's just very, very normal. That is what it is. It's very true. It's very common. So, I mean, we could talk about the proper way to price properties, but I think a general rule of thumb is you have to look at two things. You have to look at historically what has occurred. That's the facts. What are buyers willing to pay in today's market for a home? Now, here's the tough part for most sellers, Todd. For a home that is comparable to yours, okay? You got to be very honest, okay? That's number one. And then number two, you have to look at what the current properties are selling for, or your competition. So these are the homes that are currently on the market for sale, both with agents or for sale by owners, and say, okay, well, that's my competition. When I hit the market, you're either going to help those other homes sell, or they can help you sell by being the obvious choice by a pricing strategy that you come up with. Now, I would venture to argue that the pricing and marketing strategy is one of the best pieces of value we can bring to the marketplace. And there's all kinds of tactics and strategies that I go through with all of my clients that position their property as the obvious choice and get buyers, Todd, to that are willing to pay more than the house is worth through that positioning strategy. But, again, the for sale by owner, those would be the two things from a high level that I would focus on.
Yeah. And also, I mean, they could get an appraisal. So,
yeah, they can
right. I mean, they could certainly get an appraisal. I think, I don't know what the cost that you,
$200.
Yeah, probably here, like $350, something like that. You can get a residential appraisal. But guys, you want to make sure that you do price the house appropriately. And then a lot of it has to do with the historical data of this, in your area as well. What has closed, in the last 6 months. That's really what the buyer's going to get a mortgage. They're going to have an appraisal. And that's really what the appraiser is going to be looking at in the last 6 months. What else is sold that compares to your house? So very important. And just like Brandon had mentioned, decluttering. Another component is marketing and advertising. So what you're going to have to decide as a for sale by owner is, can you do the job that an agent will do in getting your property out into the World Wide Web, the public, the buyers that are out there? Can you do it efficiently, and can you do it in a way that makes them want to see your house? So a lot of people don't put enough emphasis. You have to remember now buyers are buying 24 hours a day. I mean, while you're asleep, they're on the computer, 2 o'clock in the morning. They're, I get alerts, the next morning, like, hey, I want to see this house at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. They're on the internet checking these properties out. So, let's talk about, Brandon, the marketing piece of it and what we see in the industry now as what the buyers are looking for that actually gets them to the property or prompts that phone call.
Yeah. I mean, listen, with marketing, that'd be the other thing, right? We talked about pricing and marketing being two of the big things that our industry is very, very good at. But if you're a for sale by owner, I mean, it's all going to start off again with the first impression. So where is the buyer most likely to come across your property? Well, it's not them driving around and doing it. No, it's on the internet. Okay. So that's where they're going to come across your property. Hopefully, if you've got the home in the right places. And so with that being said, putting your best foot forward. So what does that mean? That means potentially investing in a professional photo shoot. That means investing in a Matterport. That means investing in drone work to show the house in a way that if a buyer's searching through properties online and scrolling, that yours stands out, right? And so that'd be the first thing for sure, because that click, if you've done things right, that click should convert into a showing if you've positioned the home correctly. And so, obviously descriptions matter, pricing strategy matters, what you say, what you don't say, the way you've positioned the photos, all of those things matter as well. And that'd be the place I would start. I mean, there's a whole bunch more things that I think we can talk about, but that'd be the first place.
Do you recommend measuring the room sizes and things like that, floor planning?
Yeah, absolutely. Floor plans and again, with the Matterport, which will allow you to create a virtual floor plan and getting rooms all measured out so that the buyer can essentially have a virtual walkthrough before they decide whether or not to drive over to your house, which again, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, that's what you want. You want as much pre-qualification to happen before a potential buyer walks through your house. That's what you want to have occur.
Yeah, nothing drives me more crazy when you're, looking for properties and you see 8 pictures or 10 photos and, they're bad photos and you can't really get a good idea. And when people are trying to make decisions from their home, their computer, I mean, they want to see it all. What Brandon's referring to, this Matterport, it's almost so everybody knows the, like the street view, Google Street View, where you can actually drive down the street, look at the houses, zoom in. Well, this Matterport is actually this really cool 3D camera that, a lot of brokerages use. They actually give you the service most of the time. A lot of the brokerages do. And what happens is that people can walk through the rooms. They can actually zoom in. They can see the brand of refrigerator. I mean, it's really cool. They can even zoom in and look out windows at the cars in the driveway. If you guys haven't seen it, we'll post some links in the show note. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're doing everything that you can. And these things add up. These things cost money. So what we're trying to do here is we want to give you a comparison as to, you want to sell your house on your own. These are the things that it takes. Is it best doing it on your own or negotiating with a professional to have them do it for you? Let's talk about showings. You had alluded to the safety aspect, and this is a big concern. I don't like to sell fear-based. I don't want to say, guys, you're going to get robbed if you do this on your own. But the fact of the matter is, you could. I mean, what we do as professionals, we're trained, and I'm sure you do the same thing, Brandon. We tell our agents, look, when you walk into a house, number one, we hope that, we've qualified the people. We have pre-qualification letters. We know they're real. We have copies of their driver's license. If you've ever gone to an apartment complex, or yourself or with your kid, somebody has to give the driver's license to the person at the management office before they will take you to look at the apartment. So a professional is doing these things ahead of time and making certain that the right people are coming into your house. It's where you live, your belongings, your family, your jewelry, things like that. And so what we train and teach, and I'm sure, Brandon, you do the same thing, is, guys, when you're in a house, make sure you keep everybody together as much as you can. And once the people leave, check all the doors and windows. It's nothing to know, hey, the house is vacant for the showing. Let's pop the lock open on the window or open up the back door. Well, I mean, guys, the fact of the matter is this is life. This is real. So safety is a big concern. So, Brandon, what do you recommend that, what kind of qualification process should these for sale by owners be doing at the bare minimum?
Yeah, I mean, bare minimum, I would be ensuring that I have a copy of their financing approval, and not just a pre-approval, but an actual qualification from a lender. And this is minimum, we're talking about minimum, and a conversation with their lender prior to showing, because here's why. The lender also has protocols in place, right? Before they're going to issue a full approval. And so this is a bare bones minimum. We're talking about making sure they're willing and able. And from a safety perspective, if they've gone through all of those things, you've talked to the lender, and you've got a copy of their approval along with their IDs, along with those IDs, that's the start of the conversation, but that'd be a minimum.
Do you recommend that they show to multiple parties at once, or just have, individual showings?
You should never show the house alone. You should never be home alone as you're showing your home. And so from a strategic standpoint, you can make the argument that it could behoove you to have multiple people looking at the house at the same time. That's more of a strategy. But I think the takeaway there, Todd, is that you're never showing your property when you're the only one home.
And then what about answering questions? So us as professionals, we say, don't say anything, like we now have in our contracts where, when we're doing listing agreements that that the seller has to state that they know it's illegal to record conversations, right? Because people go in the house and like, oh, I love this. This is cool. Like, yeah, we need to buy this, or yeah, we need to put an offer in on this one or whatever. So it kind of takes the negotiation strength away from the buyers. But it can also work against the sellers. One of the things that we say is, my gosh, we don't want the buyers and sellers to talk right away, right? A lot of times because they say too much, they give stuff up. What about answering questions when there is no buffer in the middle? What kind of advice, can we give the sellers to say, what happens when that buyer comes in and just starts firing away the questions?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, that's such a great question, because back to the beginning of the show, I think that both agents and consumer say, oh, the process is easy. What they're referring to, Todd, is, you can put your house up for sale. And yes, you can find a buyer who is interested in the home. Right now, that's the way the market is. That is not hard. I would agree. That is not hard. And quite frankly, we're not even talking about that. And that's what the for sale by owner says. Well, that's easy. I could just put my house on Zillow. Well, yes, you're right. That's not the value of hiring a professional. Right here, what Todd's talking about is where the value starts to come in. You talk about a compliance legal nightmare. The seller has no clue. They have no training whatsoever on any of the laws or compliance when it comes to real estate transactions, and nor does the buyer. They have no idea about discrimination laws and what you can say, what you can't say, what you can ask, what you can't ask. And the seller's just being friendly over a cup of coffee or here's a water. We're talking about this. And lo and behold, you were just being nice and you came back. The buyer served you with a lawsuit. And you're like, what? I just answered their question. Exactly. So now the 3% or the 6% you were looking to save has now cost you $50,000 in a lawsuit. And oh, by the way, you haven't even sold the house yet. And so, you don't know what conversations to get in or out. You don't know what disclosures, you don't know what to disclose and what not to disclose, which is where 90% of real estate lawsuits happen. All of these things can happen during a real estate transaction that, again, the seller's mindset is like, oh, I just want to save money. I just want to save money. I just want to save money. That decision, Todd, ends up costing them way more money, way more headache, and potentially legal fees and nightmares you just don't even want to get into.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what to say and what not to say. And on the what to say, there are things that you need to say. Mm-hmm. So, when somebody says, hey, give you an example. There was a oil tank in the backyard. We just cut the spout off of it, went to propane and, left the tank in the ground. Well, if you don't disclose that, right, that could come back and get you later. So understanding what you should disclose or need to disclose is as important as what you don't say.
Well, watch this. This is another example. I mean, that one for sure. Here's an example that's going to really get people to think. A question as easy as, is this a family-friendly neighborhood? You give the wrong answer to that, you're going to court and you're going to lose. And this is the thing that people don't think about because they have no idea how real estate law works and how discrimination works, and they have no clue. They have no clue. Certainly if you the standard homeowner answers that question wrong 99% of the time.
Totally agree. Yep. And believe me, when the question comes, do people come back on the sellers later? It happens all the time, right? When things go south, or they're paying $600,000 for your house or whatever the price is, it's everything to them. So they're definitely coming back on those those issues. How about the contract? I mean, one of the things that you get when you have a professional is we have the whole library of contracts that are protecting both buyers and sellers. Where are people getting the contract? Are they hiring lawyers?
Honestly, I think they just print it offline. I'm not even kidding. The for sale by owners that I talk to, that I work with, literally Googled it and just printed off some random agreement is what I hear most often. It is just, it's very scary about the agreements that are in place when there's no licensed real estate professional who's trained in these contracts that are designed to do two things: protect the seller and shift the burden off of the seller. I mean, this is why it's so important to have representation. It's just like an attorney, It's like trying to go into a legal battle without an attorney. It's the same argument. A lot of people, I can do it myself. You could. it's like saving $5,000 off of a retainer at the cost of what? At the cost of what? And so anyway, that contract, there's so many different ones. There's so many clauses in there. There's so many different things. And every company's different. Every contract's different. And so, I think that's really important for sellers to really consider is what does this contract say that I'm bound to or not bound to? And, I think the bigger question around contracts is seller disclosures. 90% of lawsuits come across that document. And how in the world could a for sale by owner know how to fill it out if they don't know? How would they know? So that's the document I think causes the most concern for me.
Yeah, and I know, I know every state's different too. So, if you're selling, make sure that you're checking with the real estate commission. I know here locally in Maryland, they publish on the website. They actually have what required forms you need. So there aren't a whole lot of them other than the contract. I mean, obviously a contract is between a buyer and a seller. So, whatever you guys agree to. But the important thing is, as Brandon had said, the disclosure forms. There are a couple required. And I know that in Maryland, again, you check with your local real estate commission and maybe they have it published or maybe make a call. The other thing I want to talk about is because you had said, Brandon, that you talked about the buyers being very emotional and, sellers being very emotional. One of the things a professional does is kind of neutralize that, those emotions, because what happens in something like this, because you've lived in this house, you've raised maybe a family in this house, or you've lost a loved one in this house, or maybe you're selling mom and dad's, they've passed, and you're selling a house that you raised and that your parents lost, or maybe it's a divorce. There's all kinds of reasons of why people sell real estate. And that's the emotional, aspect to the transaction that hurts you the most when you can't think clearly or get beyond that. How dare they ask for $3,000 for this? This works. How dare they offer me this kind of price for the house? It's worth it, or I spent. Yep. These are all the things that we hear. And really what you have to do if you're going to do this on your own, you really have to realize you have to table that. This is not the emotional experience that you have. The buyers they don't care. No, they want to buy the house. They want the best deal that they can get. They want as much as they can get. They want you to fix as much as they can get you to fix. And, period. So when Brandon was saying, early on that, a lot of times that people do this for sale by owner, they say, hey, we won, we saved the commission, but we didn't win because we have no idea what it cost us by, not having that professional representation. So remember, you got to keep the emotions kind of at bay because you're going to go through things like the home inspection. So buyers getting home inspections in most markets, Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly you see people waiving that contingency for sure. But I would say, generally speaking, the buyer is going to want to do their due diligence on a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 purchase before they go through with that. And so I would venture to say that the majority of the contracts that we're seeing have at least a home inspection contingency on there.
So let's talk about why they should use professionals. So guys, and look, we're obviously going to talk about this. Whether you've had a bad experience with an agent before, whether you're going to sell the house yourself, and if this is something you want to do, you know what? God bless you. Best of luck. We're here for you. We can answer questions. Hopefully any real estate professional in your area or your market will be able to, we'll offer up some advice. But let's talk about some of the reasons why you should hire a professional and some of the things that you should be looking for in that, agent. Everybody knows a real estate agent. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they just go with who they know.
Yeah.
Sellers for the most part are paying the commissions, right? So when you're looking at, interviewing brokerages or agencies, know that it's a negotiation process. There is no such thing as standard. So, interview. Don't go with necessarily the person that go with the neighborhood expert. So Brandon, let's give them some tips on agent selection.
Yeah. All right. So first thing is you do need to interview more than one agent. To Todd's point, listen, everybody knows somebody who has a real estate license. That is not the deciding factor on hiring that agent. Okay. I mean, everybody's got a license these days. And so interview, I would say 2 to 3 people. Why? Well, perspective has great value. Perspective has great value. You're going to interview the person that chances are you probably use, and maybe you don't, because when you interview 2 other people that show you a completely different plan, which we're going to talk about in a second, you might say to yourself, wow, I love you, Johnny. We're great friends, but man, oh man, I know this is just a hobby for you, but this is my house. And so I talked to some other people, and here's what they're doing. And so perspective has great value. That'd be the number 1 tip. Number 2, I'm going to ask the agent during the interview process, I'm going to ask them, what is your specific plan of action to get the property sold? And it's not put a sign out front and sit back and wait. And what I specifically mean is, what are you, agent, going to do to find me the buyer? And so, because here's the other big issue that for sale by owners have, which I agree with them. They don't need an agent to stick a sign in the front yard and wait for all the other agents to sell the house. What are you going to specifically do to go out there and find the buyer? That would be number 2. And I want a plan of action. Number 3, ask them to see a copy of their daily schedule. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis to get my property sold? Ask them for a copy. You're going to fall out of your seat when you find out they don't have one. Okay, that's when you're dealing with a real professional. Number 4 is, okay, well, what do your terms look like? Meaning, the number 1 complaint in our industry is, after you hire an agent, after they give you all the talk, that everything they said they were going to do doesn't happen, things go downhill. What type of protection do you have as the seller to get out of that agreement if that agent does not do what they say they were going to do? The next thing you want to do is you want to find out, okay, well, do I still have the freedom and flexibility to sell my house on my own? Or if I agree to list with you, do I lose that opportunity? Right? So we give our for sale by owners that we work with the opportunity to bring us a buyer. So for sale by owners love that, because now we're putting both of our efforts to work, and it's like, who's going to come up with the buyer first? The other thing is, what does your compensation structure look like based on how the buyer is procured, right? And so we have a flexible compensation structure that we walk all the for sale by owners through. And then, those would be the main things that I really want to know. And then lastly, I would say, what is the communication plan? How are you going to keep me up to speed with knowing exactly what's happening with the sale of my home, so that I don't have to be this anxious, nervous wreck because you're not calling me, you're not providing me updates. What are you going to do to make sure that I always know what's happening with the process? Those would be some great interview questions.
And to your point, I mean, with hiring the professional, you want to make sure they're full-time.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of agents out there that do this part-time, and guys, I mean, if you want to talk about the frustrations that you've had, or if you've had bad experiences, number 1, make sure that the agent is a full-time agent.
Yeah.
And, the other thing is, make sure they're an expert in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, if they don't know, at least interview the neighborhood experts. Right. So that they understand, what the pricing is in the neighborhood, who's buying, what are the economic factors. They become the pros of those areas. And we're actually commissioned to know that. I mean, when we get our license, it's an agent's responsibility to know what's happening on the local and national real estate market, on the industry in that level of what's going on. So you want somebody, and the only way of really having that full comprehension is somebody to be, a full-time, agent. Also, think about whether, when you're interviewing them, think about if they'll work with you, like Brandon's saying, if they bring a buyer forward. Ask the question. Keep in mind that, this is a negotiation process. Don't just flat out say, we're not going to hire, use a real estate agent. Interview them and ask, the pricing questions.
Yeah. And I would just, two things on there, because I think it's really important. Get a copy of their resume in addition to their schedule. Most agents don't have one. Get a copy of their resume, and then really understand their pricing strategy in addition to the marketing strategy. All of those things combined, if you really go through that, you'll find out that, Coach Billy Bob, who coaches the kids, who has his license on the side, probably isn't the right agent for the job.
So, Mark, let's just take a couple of these comments. So, Mark, we appreciate your comment. Mark says, Santarcerio. I don't know. I probably didn't do a very good job with your name, but he said he 100% agrees with us, the 80-20 rule. We appreciate you listening and watching, guys, and bring your comments. If you're watching right now, we want to hear from you. Kevin Henderson asked a question: what is the benefit of going with a selling agent rather than an auctioneer, especially in a market like we have now? Aren't selling agents acting as auctioneers in essence? That's a great question. Brandon, you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, the auctioneer, first off, I don't believe they are acting fiduciaries. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing, right? And so you are not only hiring a marketing specialist, a pricing specialist, a negotiation specialist, you're hiring a fiduciary who by law has to represent your best interest, because here's the other reality that auctioneers may or may not get you. Not always in all situations is the highest price the best offer. And what auctioneers do is focus solely on the price. Because let me give you an example, Kevin. And if you were selling your house, here's what I would ask you. If you had two offers, one was $250,000, one was $240,000, and you didn't know anything else about the offer, certainly the auctioneer says, "Well, Kevin, I got you $250,000. Well, you didn't know there was a $20,000 seller concession, and they're asking for you to not only cover all their closing costs, but they wanted you to also pay transfer tax. Well, now when you lift up the hood, because you didn't have a fiduciary, you didn't know that offer actually didn't make sense. So though that's just one example. There's many, many, many others, but I would say the biggest thing is when we say representation, we're talking about fiduciary responsibility. This is a legal obligation that broker and agent has legally to protect your best interest, whether they like it or not. That's how I would answer that.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, and I'll just add a couple comments. I mean, Kevin, and we really appreciate your question, because you would think that it is like we're like auctioneers at this point with the amount of bids and offers that are coming in. But like Brandon said, an auctioneer is going to take $1 more, and the hammer is going to come down. And what happens is it needs to close.
That's right.
The deal needs to close. So, there's so much more to just the offer. Like Brandon said, what is the probability or percentage that it is going to go to settlement? And here's what happens. And a lot of times, and if you follow a lot of these online auctions, a lot of times what happens is, it closes and then it comes back on again. And then it closes,
So
and then,
true.
or not closes. I'm sorry, that the auction closes,
Yeah.
and it looks like it's going to sell, but then it pops back up again as active. And what happens is every time that happens, the buyers are going, wait a minute, what's wrong with this house?
Yeah.
Why are the deals falling through? They don't have the details or the intel necessarily. So what our goal is as professionals is to make sure, A, we're vetting the deals, with you, so that you understand the offer that you're ultimately accepting. You make the decision, but we're helping you to understand with our professional, experience, what looks best to close. And it's not always the price.
Let me give another nitty-gritty, detailed, super tactical piece of advice, so Kevin's has something to consider. Here's another really good example of why having an agent that represents you as the seller makes all the sense in the world. Now, let's look at, again, one offer $255,000, one at $250,000. They're both conventional financing. Well, what if, Kevin, that the offer, and you're asking, let's just say you're asking $250,000. And so if you took the 255, the house has to appraise at 255 for that thing to close, to Todd's point. Otherwise, you have to renegotiate or go back to the market. What if you knew that the offer with 250, I talked to the buyer's lender on your behalf, and I had the lender run your property address through a desktop underwriter and got an appraisal waiver on the offer of 250. I mean, it's huge value. That's another very nitty-gritty, super behind the curtain, tactical piece of advice that we're looking at when we're vetting offers that has so much more to do with just the number.
Absolutely. So true. Well, look, guys, we hope that we've given you some kind of good advice tonight that you can make a much more informed decision as whether you want to dive in and take on this task of selling your own home. I would encourage you, like we have mentioned, to reach out to your local realtors in your marketplace, at least interview them, pick their brains, kind of find out what their advice is before you get started, and know that we're a resource for you. Brandon and I, you could reach out to us. We would be happy to, give you some pointers, some tips if you're not represented, and certainly help you locally in whatever state you're in with some good contacts to call of some true professionals out there. Brandon and I both collectively cover the country with, good professional network of agents. So Brandon, thank you so much for being on tonight's show.
No problem, man. That was a lot of fun. I loved it. And I'm sure we'll do this again. I'll get you on my show, but I think what you're doing is great service to your community. And I think that you're providing a lot of value with the work that you guys are doing.
I appreciate it, man. Well, you keep crushing it. And guys, like I said, we'll put all of Brandon's information in the show notes. Please reach out, give him a follow and a subscribe. And guys, if you're watching this, whatever platform you are, if you haven't, hit the subscribe button or the follow button or the like button, and wherever you're, watching this content and you'd like to get notified when we do this more often, please do so now. And we thank you for watching and hope to see you again soon. Have a great night.